Every day, business leaders make choices that shape lives. What if those choices could unlock prosperity for more people? What is the role of business in advancing economic mobility?
We've gathered over 60 leaders in Nashville across business, government, and nonprofits to discuss the firm's role in advancing economic mobility. I think there is enormous talent in the middle of the country. There's people doing great things, companies that are doing great things, and nobody knows about it.
Our Roundtable in Nashville discussed powerful strategies to advance economic mobility through giving workers equity ownership, investing in their skills, and strengthening the communities they call home. Through these discussions, we explored the question, what is our role in creating opportunity for everyone?
My research is focusing on trying and understanding how private organizations can better equip workers to develop the skills that are needed to use new technologies, but also more generally be competitive, both in the labor markets and also help the competitiveness of their organizations. The difference between upskilling and reskilling is actually quite simple. Upskilling means providing workers with skills that help them improve their performance in their current occupation. Reskilling is a little bit harder in the sense that you are providing skills that help people transition from one occupation to another. So the need to equip workers with the right skills for the right moment and the right technologies is really a primary importance for organizations. Now, of course, this is especially important for workers, and it's especially important for workers that are at risk, meaning employed in occupations that are at risk of being obsolete, or in occupations that don't really match their potential. And I think reskilling is also important for society, because if we don't equip people to make these transitions and this adjustment, one risk, and it's a risk that personally worries me enormously, is that we will have parts of society that are completely unable to reach new opportunities or new capabilities that are offered by technology.
Rather than trying to find people to move to Louisville, Kentucky, I decided I'm just going to find people who like living here and to skill them up.
Interapt is a technology consulting business with a very significant focus on workforce development. And the problem that we are solving throughout the entire nation is really building a brand new pipeline of custom talent for enterprise organizations and government as well.
The original thesis for my company was that the entire country needs technology and technology skills, and as well as technology services. So I decided that my sort of unique value proposition was I was going to do IT consulting, working on mobile phones, cloud before it was called cloud, data science, what have you, in the Midwest. So think we're one of 2 or 3 companies in Louisville versus one of 1,000 in Silicon Valley. We picked up clients, Fortune 100 companies, Humana, Fifth Third Bank, GE Appliances, CVS Health. In 2015, they wanted to give us more work. I couldn't find the talent to supply those projects. So as an entrepreneur, turning away work is the worst thing that anyone can do when you're trying to grow a company. There was a tremendous amount of people in the workforce that maybe had non-traditional degrees, but they probably had aptitude for UI, UX, or data science, or programming, what have you. So I took those people, assessed them, built a curriculum around what I needed them to know, and how they could help my clients, and then deployed them on projects. So that was the original start of this whole journey of mine, was that I just was solving my own business problem, and eventually that caught fire.
The results of the Interapt model are really interesting. First of all, the people who are hired through the Interapt model earn more, but also from the perspective of the companies, they stay longer. And companies who hire these workers eventually report that they are much less likely to turn over.
More than 90% of the individuals that go through the apprenticeship pathway successfully complete it. More than 80% of those individuals land inside of an employer partner. And more than 25% of them have been promoted within their first year as a full-time employee.
We have over 86% retention after 4 years because people love the environment. They feel supported. Those that do go to other companies and other jobs do make more money, but they stay in touch and say, we miss that sort of different model that Interapt had, because it doesn't exist in most companies.
I personally believe that it's the coaching and the mentorship that is like the magic of Interapt. I think that's where the magic happens. There are plenty of organizations that are focused on upskilling and reskilling, and many of them do an exceptional job at it. But not all of those organizations take that reskilling process and marry it with that continuous coaching and mentorship in all walks of life.
And these success coaches actually take the time to talk to us. We have weekly meetings, and in those meetings, we're able to express our doubts and our fears. And that helps to keep moving forward, knowing that we have that support to lean on.
We chose to work with Interapt for their social mission combined with quality of individuals. I think this has changed the way our existing employees have thought about talent development and retention. It's shown them that diversity in thought is a very powerful tool. And our clients not only require it, they're actually asking for it more and more.
Leveraging a company like Interapt is actually quite complementary to developing an internal labor market. The main difference is that a company like Interapt might expand your labor pool and help you with the screening and the selection of candidates on attributes that you may not be able to capture. It may be too costly for you as a firm to capture. So that's the value added that a company like Interapt can offer.
I believe businesses have an obligation and a responsibility to focus on continuous growth and improvement for all of the individuals that sit inside of these communities.
Economic mobility is empowering people to know that they do belong, they can contribute, and they do have this ability to learn new skills. Then that's when they start saying, what else can I do? And I think that is one of the core things that our model has done that I didn't set out to do, was teach confidence and teach the ability to realize that, hey, I do belong.
I've grown so much as a person and as a professional. I have learned so many different things on how to communicate effectively with others, how to create learning plans to have my continuous learning and just continue upskilling to make sure that I don't stay stagnant in my career.
In order to close skill mismatches, you need a variety of stakeholders to come together. In the Interapt case, we see one specific type of intermediary that scouts and trains talent. But think about the role that colleges, community colleges, vocational schools could play in helping people develop skills that are needed in the labor market, but also helping match them with the right type of organizations. Then, of course, I think there is also a role to play for policy here. That one fundamental role that the policymaker can play here is to help identify what are the success stories? What are the training companies or the training organizations that really deliver value? What are the companies that are able to take this talent and help it flourish rather than just being transactional about it? There's so much uncertainty on what works and what doesn't work. And I believe that here is where the policymaker can really make a huge difference.
When you look at the ROI, the investment in a human being of $20,000 of upskilling comes back in 1.7 years in reduction in social services, contributions to the tax base, buying more goods from groceries to property to cars to what have you. The multiplier effect of giving someone the ability of not being under the poverty line and draining social service budgets, but instead being above it and contributing to them, that flip that you can do in such a short period of time is dramatic for communities that need these types of solutions.
If I were to advise a company of a large organization, I would say the main message is that there is value to be created for you as an organization and for society by broadening your scope, the ability to nurture talent internally, to help people acquire new skills. These are things that company can do on their own. They don't necessarily need to have these external organizations to support them. I think it really comes down to the alignment with their strategic objectives, their organizational structure, and their talent strategies.
Equity ownership is important to include in a conversation about economic mobility because it has such power to lift people up from a financial perspective. When you give an employee equity and you instill in them the belief that equity will increase with their effort, then all of a sudden everybody's incentives are aligned, and it gives you the opportunity to grow the pie in a sustainable way as well, because you are not paying your employees additional wages, you are giving them a promised share of the profits in the long run.
The Share of Success program is a straight percentage that's allocated to everybody in the company. So the way that works is whenever there is a distribution to the shareholders, it first passes through the filter of the share of success.
And so we can think of it as equity in that, much like the private equity firms or their limited partners provide capital to the private equity firm to buy the business, and at the end they get the returns from that initial investment. The employees are putting in their labor as the investment and will get a return at the end of the day should the company sell for a price that's higher than the original sale price.
So everybody knows that when a shareholder is going to be receiving some kind of liquidity, they will get it too.
Gibson Guitars is an interesting case for several reasons. First of all, it is one of the early companies in the private equity space that thought about distributing ownership to employees. Second, they did so at a time where they believed the culture really needed to be rebuilt. And they saw this as a way to improve engagement. And third, because they met with initial success with this program. And from a cultural perspective, it seems like the success is still going strong. But from a financial perspective, they've faced several macroeconomic headwinds that create tensions around the underlying value of the shares, which ultimately leads to one big critique or concern about equity ownership, which is, does it become demotivational when the shares are underwater or when the shares that the employees hold aren't worth what they were initially intended to be worth?
I firmly believe that the Share of Success program has created a culture of A players. And I know this because I'm there every Friday. I'm there building with them. And they tell me, they ask me questions. They want to know how we're doing beyond the quarterly moments where I get to share information with them.
It definitely connects the team who works out on the production floor to the higher levels in leadership, because there's direct communication from the CEO down to someone who is working with their hands building an instrument.
It takes significant effort on the part of executives and managers when you institute these kinds of programs. They need to continually remind employees that they are owners. They need to make that connection between the employees' efforts and the rewards that they'll receive for those efforts. And they also just need to educate them on what equity means, how equity grows, and why they are being promised equity as a way to improve their financial situation. Where we find Gibson today is that it is actively pursuing a sale. It has been held by a private equity firm for a traditional holding period, but they are facing headwinds. Tariffs have had a huge impact on a company that exports a lot and manufactures a lot of its products abroad and also relies on a lot of raw materials from abroad. And so they are both trying to sell the company to provide that payout to employees, but also do so in a way that addresses the macroeconomic risks and uncertainties that I think Gibson and many other companies are facing right now. The Share of Success seems to be really helping them weather that storm. On one hand, when you walk around the business, you see people really engaged and passionate about the jobs they do. There seems to be this remarkable level of patience given that they are expecting some kind of payout.
The biggest benefit of a broad-based plan is it influences behavior. And it leads to a different type of two-way communication flow where people not only embrace and accept maybe our strategic priorities, maybe our leadership style, maybe our ideas. It actually turns that into advocating. I will give you the example of our people in our factories, which we call crafteries. They have come up with multiple ideas of ways that we can increase gross margin by reducing cost, reducing waste, coming up with ideas of how do we increase our first pass yield, how do we increase our roll-through yield, reduce touch points. All of that translates directly into our margin. And when every quarter we go and we do town halls and we walk our people through our P&L and we show them how they've influenced gross margin, and then we have been custodians of our operating expenses. We're creating value.
This program and the ownership involved with it really has helped me sharpen my vision for the long term and to help drive more strategic thinking versus tactical thinking.
People feel like what they're doing on a day-to-day basis is important, not just so that they can make a paycheck or so that they can provide for their families, but also that it's meaningful. You're contributing to something that's impacting the world in a positive way.
The Gibson case is a moment in time, and it's been embraced. People see it as a way of creating some form of additional wealth beyond our overall compensation plan. And people see it as an alignment of interests. Because when the shareholders get liquidity, they will get liquidity. So they know that we have alignment, but at some point, because we are private equity owned, there will be another change of control. And that uncertainty is there if the new owner will want to continue with this. Obviously, to the extent that I'm still the CEO, I am going to be an advocate to continue with this plan because I've seen the results. And I hope that that's the case when there's a change of control.
When I think about the leaders who have done this well and have succeeded in implementing these ownership programs, the key characteristic is that they are on the shop floor meeting with employees, not because it is PR or helps with retention, but because they deeply care about these people and really want them to succeed.
An economic development ecosystem is really taking the lens from either the worker or the firm and situating both of those players in a larger context. If you're a firm thinking about situating in location A versus location B, you are going to take into account the supply of talent, the infrastructure in place to put a factory, the governance infrastructure to think about whether you're going to have a predictable partner who is going to be easy to work with for building permits or for expansion or for other opportunities. Training institutions like community colleges and other skill development agencies have been shown to be immensely important. And those institutions tend to be the ones that provide a pipeline both for building new infrastructure or new facilities, but also staffing them later on.
Economic development is a team sport, and everybody needs to understand their role in building a stronger regional economy. Everybody has a role to play. But for a kind of truly ecosystem approach, you also need to attract new employers and help spur new startups. Cities need to go all in on building on existing assets, supporting legacy employers, making big bets for the future.
There's sort of two prongs to the LEAP district and Eli Lilly. The district itself, which has the government stakeholders around Lebanon, Indiana, and Eli Lilly, which is the enormous pharmaceutical innovation and manufacturing firm. Both come together investing billions of dollars into a LEAP district that is outside of Lebanon. And the LEAP district is designed to support Lilly's next generation of drug manufacturing as they have new drugs coming online, along with providing a talent pipeline and sort of supporting infrastructure for Lilly to be able to realize those opportunities. Lilly and the LEAP district realized that they weren't going to have enough techs to support their manufacturing or scientists to support their manufacturing, and they've partnered with local community colleges like Ivy Tech and the Purdue's of the world to make sure that there's a skilled workforce to support advanced manufacturing there. But without that prior planning, if you think about sort of a 3 or 4 year lag time to get this project off of the ground, and then you build things and then there's no one there to actually work the lines, that's a disaster. One of the things that happens in Lebanon is that the mayor talks about being able to lower taxes or to provide new infrastructure or new public goods that would be funded by the incremental tax revenue that the LEAP district is going to get. I think that's really smart. You broaden the base of benefits beyond just the folks who are going to get direct jobs. But then the second question is, to what extent do you have a mandate if not everyone is on board, is why you might see some of the tension between farmers who are upset about taking land or taking water, taking resources from them, if they don't expect that they're going to move into one of the sectors that is either directly benefiting from the investment or would have some spillover benefits in terms of other services or other opportunities locally. And so stakeholders on both sides, government and business, are going to have to deal with that perception that not everyone is going to feel like they won in these transactions. And as a result, there's a lot of detail in the case about issues around transparency, issues around fair dealing, and some political blowback around the LEAP district, even if most of the commentators are very excited about the possibility that LEAP is going to raise living standards on average. The second reason that this case is chosen is that there's a clear sort of anchor tenant where the LEAP district is kind of built around Lilly's needs, which raises the question of whether you want an anchor tenant or whether you want to do more agnostic planning for innovation. There are a couple of core things that you should take away. The first is if you're a business leader and you have not engaged with the other stakeholders in your ecosystem, if you want to do big things on the horizon, you need the training institutions. You need the providers of infrastructure and community support to allow you to make the next leap forward. If you are a government or a community-focused leader, the takeaway for you has to be that you have to understand business needs. You're not going to get an advanced drug manufacturer to site in your backyard unless you can provide the life sciences manufacturing techs, the scientists, and the engineers who are going to support that venture in the future. And as a result, business leaders and government leaders can't make these decisions in a vacuum. They have to make these decisions as partners because ultimately, I think the last takeaway is that there will be political pressure to stop these deals from folks who believe that they're not going to be winners. Say in 10 years, the LEAP district is a success. Once that's established, the real test is whether other constituents in the business community find the LEAP district an attractive area for their own future investment. And so continuing to get other businesses and other firms to locate there probably means that you create a flywheel effect where you get the benefits of agglomeration.
Economic development, innovation needs to be place-based, that every city can participate in the innovation economy if they grow from the inside out. And that means harnessing their community and region strengths, their industrial assets, their people, their talent, their dreams, and to create opportunities that expand jobs for more people. Every city is looking to grow good jobs in tech. And each city is kind of at a different stage of their life cycle in that complicated process. I've been really impressed by the work that Michigan Central is doing in Detroit. This is the Ford-backed innovation district that's reactivated a new train station, kind of part innovation infrastructure, part startup accelerator, part ecosystem builder. And their mission is to develop new technologies, track new startups, incubate the next kind of generation of employers for Detroit. And so I think they're doing a really good job of leveraging a corporate partner, but building out an ecosystem in next-gen technologies. The other, and this personal bias on my part, is I helped lead this effort, but Tulsa Innovation Labs in Tulsa, that's partnering with oil and gas companies to build out an entrepreneurial ecosystem in energy tech. So leveraging the legacy industries and supply chains and ecosystem in the oil and gas field to attract and support new startups that help those companies innovate, become more resilient, but create new firms and new jobs for Tulsans. Tulsa Innovation Labs raised $200 million in 4 years, on track to grow 70,000 tech jobs over the next decade, over $1 billion in economic activity. And for me, I think the takeaway is building on what you have, building on regional assets, building cross-sector partnerships, taking an ecosystem approach, developing a handful of clusters that represent the strongest opportunities for your city. I think Tulsa's doing that really effectively.
Mid-sized cities have got to kind of create their own economic future, right? The knowledge economy is aggregating in larger metros. And so for Chattanooga, it's about really fighting for relevance. We had the first municipal fiber network in the country. And now we're doing, quantum computing on that network. So it's been a real advantage. But we're being much more intentional now about really focusing on clusters and attracting the industries and the jobs that we want, and the ones that frankly, comport with our philosophy and will work with us on creative workforce development strategies and upskilling. We're lucky we've got organizations like the Enterprise Center in Chattanooga that address specifically digital inequity, but really it has to do with working with the school system and with our employers on what we call workforce development reform. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on in that area right now. We have a great history of public-private partnership in Chattanooga, and it is in everyone's best interest that they do so because divided economies don't work.
Most of these problems require a whole of society approach. So when we think about having the workforce that we want and that we need, it's not just on the worker. It is on all of us. It's going to happen because governments, businesses, nonprofits work together and create policies around what that industrial strength and strategy of this country is going to look like. Because if you think about all these technologies that will define the future, they're not just simply software anymore. They are in the physical world, and that requires you to industrially build things. And that is an opportunity to create some of those good jobs where people are advancing, they're being paid well, they have freedom and voice in their work, and more importantly, they have the ability to advance, that the first job isn't the last job.
You need civic institutions that can bring the public and private and social sectors together, that can help guide all of these partners through these types of conversations and solution building to create a shared vision for growth, to create investments that advance economic mobility. You need an anchor organization leading the charge that's helping define swim lanes and assigning roles and responsibilities and bringing these partners together. You can't expect a private company to do that on their own. That's not what they're made for. Government, civil institutions, the social sector, that's what they do best.